ask some questions Christmas related. If you ever had any Christmas tradition questions that you had, I was trying to give you an opportunity to ask them. If you've got more, you can shoot them towards me. That link will be, I'll leave it open until after Christmas, or at least till after the Wednesdays that we have for Christmas. But I did get a few responses, so I wanted to try to tackle some of these for you tonight. And if they spark more for you, then certainly feel free. I'll try to jab at them next week a little bit. We'll play a little bit more games and try to get a little bit probably movement around as well, so we're not just sitting there staring at me the whole time, but we'll have a good time with that as well. But we are going to dive in. So without any further ado, I thought I would jump in right with the funnest one. And maybe for you it wasn't fun. Maybe it was real. But the first question that I got was, why do we have a pagan shrine set up in our church lobby right now? And so I said that kind of comedically. I don't certainly mean to make light of anybody if this is a genuine question for you. But so I did, but I don't mean to. So we'll backtrack all that because I do know that this is an issue that people have, and you might think, what are you talking about when I even read that question? So some of you might be thinking, what would prompt a question like that? Even if it was just somebody sitting there when that email popped up or that text popped up yesterday, just wanting to see what I would say when we got to this moment. So whichever one it was, I wanted to try to do as much justice to it to give you a little bit of context for the ask. Because there are people that I've watched plenty of videos. I've had conversations with people. I knew people in college that would not. They did not celebrate Christmas as a family, and their belief was because it originated in pagan practices. And so I want to try to give you just a few things to think about with regards to the question, and that way we can look at it. So the first thing I want to just clarify is, okay, as I've already alluded to a little bit, but what does somebody mean by the question? And the simple reality is that the Christmas tree itself does it have ties to pagan rituals from years and years and years ago that Christians then appropriated and began to use within our celebrations? And is that if that's the case, and we got it from paganism, is it something that we should actually be doing? Because, we're supposed to come out from among them and be separate. We're not supposed to learn the practices of the world. We're not supposed to, we're supposed to look different. We're supposed to be a peculiar people. And so if we are adopting the practices of paganism into our own traditions, and obviously we have one in our church, then is that not coming uncomfortably close to that reality? And so that is really the question that sparks some of that, and some of the historical reasoning that sometimes gets put forth to say that is what happened, was that when the Catholic Church would come into a new area, specifically when they came north out of, obviously spreading throughout the Roman Empire, when they came north to where the Druids and people were at, and the British Isles and stuff like that, when they kind of came into that in the area of Germany and in Northern Europe, there were already some practices that people had in place that they did some celebrations at that period of time. And so the Catholic Church, then this is what is put forth as being the story of what happened. Then the Catholic Church, wanting to make it easier for pagan people to adopt a new faith system, they adopted the forms of the pagan rituals and just made them Christian, so that the pagan people, the unbelievers, would say, oh yeah, well, it's not that much different. We can do that. And so that would be the line of reasoning that puts forth where that came from. I'm going to try to break down for you why I don't think that there is really historical support for that being what actually happened. But that's what is said has happened. And then obviously the Catholic Church was the predominant. We've talked about Catholicism in here a few times, but was the predominant religious and political faith and governmental structure for much of the world for the Middle Ages. And so by the time that the Middle Ages ended, it was just so entrenched in our thinking that we just kind of do it traditionally without thinking about it. And yet, if you dig into it, well, if it came from paganism, shouldn't we just do away with it? So that would be the the gist of what would spark a question like that. So the question I want to ask you next is our church's Christmas tree a pagan shrine? You have to define. You have to define what you're talking about if you're really diving into that. And if somebody comes to you, or you've come across a video online somewhere, some reel or something, and somebody gets up and they kind of spout off a bunch of little things and say, yeah, that's why it is tied to paganism. You have to ask the question: okay, is a Christmas tree today actually tied to pagan practices? When somebody sees our Christmas tree in our church lobby, or the one at your house, because I would assume that probably most of you, I've been in many of your homes, most of you probably have a Christmas tree at your house. Is that a shrine to paganism? I was joking, maybe it was on Sunday, or the week before, it was Sunday morning when I came out, and some of you were in class, our class on Sunday, and I came out on Sunday morning, and Samuel was sitting at the bottom of our tree looking at one of his gifts, but he was just like kneeling there at the tree, look, that's what it looked like. Yeah. Do we worship the tree, right? No, we don't. The idea that when I put that question up there that most of us had was to smirk or to laugh, because maybe you know the issue, but you certainly don't probably know anybody that comes across a Christmas tree anywhere and thinks, I wonder what pagan god that is devoted to. Because if it is by definition pagan, a pagan shrine is devoted to a pagan god. And you'd have to answer the question, okay, what pagan god is that tree devoted to? Or is it devoted to one at all? And the obvious answer to that question is no, that's not why we put it up. We put it up, and I'm going to come back to this in a little bit. We put it up for a specific reason. It has nothing to do with paganism. And so by definition, that tree exists for no pagan purposes right now. I mean, it has no implications that we have vested it with that would be alluding to paganism as it stands right now. And that's an important thing that we're going to come back to here in just a little bit. And I'll give you a chance to maybe ask some clarifying thoughts, or if you've got a point to add, you're certainly welcome to do so as we go throughout it. So then the next question is, okay, if that is not pagan in its strictest definition right now, I mean, it is, we have made that tree about lifting up the some symbolic reasons or symbolic truths about Christmas, and we can talk about that, and maybe we will a little bit by the time that's all over tonight. But okay, if that one's not pagan, so then we have to ask the question: is the tradition of Christmas trees actually borrowed from pagan idolatry? And the reality is that the records of pagan religions, or maybe not even religions, but pagan cultures, and I'm just using the word pagan as if you kind of understand. Pagan ultimately was is a term that would refer to anybody that it was a term that kind of arrived after the fact. Pagans did not call themselves pagans. It was a label that was given to somebody, just like heathen or barbarians. The Romans called anybody that wasn't Roman a barbarian. And so there were relatively sophisticated groups of people that the Romans would have called a barbarian, but that was just because they were not Roman. And pagan kind of falls in that category. It's somebody that does not believe in God. And so these pagan cultures, or these godless cultures that existed, they did have celebrations where in the middle of the wintertime, they would use, in the winter solstice, they would use evergreen trees and branches from evergreen trees to decorate around those seasonal festivities. But let me ask you this question. In the middle of the wintertime, what else are you going to decorate with? You're not going to go get a dead branch. Like, well, let me just go pick up some half-decomposed leaves off the ground. And so the only available option in those cultures for any type of decoration, festive, drawn from nature, that we're talking about, this was not when you could just order something from Amazon and have it there from wherever that could just, add some pop and zest into you. I mean, you had to cut your orange and hang your orange inside your wreath so you'd have a little bit of natural, lively smell inside your stale, old, musty house that doesn't have air conditioning, doesn't have heat. I mean, you have to put yourself there, because that's what those things were there for. And so there were very real practices that people did. But there's a couple things. Not every one of those practices was always vested with pagan symbolism. They weren't always doing it because of their worship of a false deity. Sometimes they were just doing it as part of the celebration itself. And so I'm saying evergreen leaves, evergreen branches and stuff, but ultimately, obviously, a tree is the ultimate Christmas tree. It would be the ultimate manifestation of that, bringing the whole tree inside. And so there certainly were cultures and practices that people did that. But you have to be careful when you think about whether or not just because somebody that did not believe used a practice means that the practice itself being duplicated by some other group is an explicit or implicit acceptance of or identification with the practice that group was doing. For instance, you can't say that because I like summer. I don't like summer that as much as winter, but I like summer, that I worship the sun. I just love when the sun shines outside. My wife loves sunshine. I think every day that the sun shines, she mentions it. Like, man, it's nice to see sunshine. But she's not a sun worshiper. She just likes sunshine. But sun worshipers like sunshine too. So you can't like sunshine because sun worshipers like sunshine, right? That it is very, very similar in its logical construct to do that with sunshine as much as to do that with a tree. And so you have to be careful to recognize. Okay, yeah, cultures did. There were cultures that at winter solstice they'd use pine trees, they'd use evergreen branches to decorate. They would do all of those things, but they were many times separated cultures. They did not share concepts with one another. It was just the only option anybody actually had to do anything. And so they would arrive at these things independently. And so if that was true within unbelieving cultures, what I'm going to show you here or talk to you about here in just a second is also could be just as true that Christians just did the same thing. And just because they all chose to use the same branch of a tree doesn't mean that they were bringing in the concept of doing that because, well, that's what pagans did, and we want to get them to believe what we believe, and so we're doing the same thing. Basically put, the creation that we all live in, pagan or believing, is the same. What we choose to do with that creation, what we choose to see as a result of that creation, is what is different. It is said that the pagans would use the evergreen tree in the middle of the wintertime to symbolize life in the time of death. And Christianity would use the evergreen tree, the pine tree, to symbolize the life that Christ can give us even when around us things are dead. I mean, it's kind of one of those things that's just kind of like, well, what else can you take from a Christmas, a living thing in the middle of a dead, in the middle of the dead woods? And so I'm kind of beating that into the ground, but that's a very important thing to think about. And then the next question is, when we're looking at whether or not the tree itself was borrowed from pagan idolatry, is where did the practice of using Christmas trees today even actually come from? Now, does anybody know the country of the origin specifically of Christmas trees as we do it now? Germany. So there's a really, really important German figure in the Reformation. Does anybody know his name? What? Yeah, Martin Luther. Is that what you were saying? So, all right, I want to give you both credit. Martin Luther. Martin Luther was the guy who nailed his 95 Theses to the door and the church, and he stood up against the practices of indulgences and believed and preached the salvation through faith in Jesus Christ alone. And the story that we get for the origin of decorating a pine tree with lights and bringing it into your house is a legendary story about Martin Luther. So there is no, you can't cite the exact source where it comes from, but it has been a story that has been told all the way back until, as far as I understand it, the days of Martin Luther. So the likelihood of it being a legitimate story is pretty high. It's just we don't necessarily have a trace of all of the this telling of it. So Martin Luther, it said, was out in the woods at night one night, and he looked up and saw the stars, and he thought, or when he saw the stars, it made him think of the fact that Jesus left heaven and all of the lights of heaven to come to this earth to live and to die for us. And so he went out and got the only living thing that he could, a tree, and cut it down and brought it into his house. And he put the lights on the tree. And he told the people that he was there with, these lights are to remind us of Jesus and remind us of the fact that he was the light of the world. The fact to remind us of the glories of heaven that he left so that he could come to this dark earth for us. And it was done, obviously, in the midst of the darkest time of the year to accentuate that fact. And so that's the story where that came from. And he was German. And the practice of Christians putting up Christmas trees originates in Germany. And then later on, during the reign of Queen Victoria, Prince Albert was her husband, and Prince Albert was German. And so they would bring Christmas trees into the royal household, and they were basically the influencers of the day. They were the celebrities of the day. And so there would be paintings done of the royal family with their Christmas tree, and it became popular throughout the British Empire to be like the royal family. So people began to get Christmas trees, and so it spread from there to the rest of the British Empire, which obviously was a major, much more major in its day than it is now. And so that was really where the tradition of Christmas trees came from. It came from a former Catholic who got saved, who we don't agree with everything that he taught, but who got saved, and then he brought the Christmas tree in to invested it with symbolism that was significant for Christianity. And then that, a couple hundred years later, several hundred years later, got popularized by the British royal family with its Christian connotations, and then spread basically to the rest of the world. That is where the Christmas tree in its most likely iteration came from. Not from pagan idolatry. Though there are similarities to the concept of people using evergreen and all of those different things. Next question I want to ask real quick is, are Christmas trees mentioned in the Bible? There's another question, one question that came in tonight. Why don't you take your Bible, let's turn to Jeremiah. I'm going to read a passage of Scripture, and one that, no doubt, if you've ever been acquainted with this argument, you most likely have heard this passage mentioned before. Jeremiah chapter 10 says, verse number 1, I'll just read, I'll start reading down through verse about 5. Hear ye the word of the Lord, which the Lord speaketh unto you, O house of Israel. Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen. So don't do the things that they do, right? Don't use Christmas trees. And be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. For the customs of the people are vain. For one cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workmen with the axe. They deck it with silver and with gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it move not. They are upright as the palm tree, but speak not. They must needs be born, because they cannot go. Be not afraid of them, for they cannot do evil, neither also is it in them to do good. What's that sound like? A Christmas tree, right? You cut a tree down in the forest. Now, you know what anachronism is? Is when you take a modern day understanding of something and you read it back into history. We already know that Christmas trees truly originated in Germany. Whether the specifics of that exact story about Martin Luther are exactly true or not is insignificant, really, because we do know that the modern day practices of Christmas trees did come from Germany. Not the exile period of Israel, like hundreds of years before Jesus was born, right? So that to be like, well, that's got to be a Christmas tree. They did not have pine trees. in Babylon? Because that's what he was talking. He was talking about talking to the Jews who had been deported to Babylon. The reference there is to a tree. If you're making an idol in Bible times, you know how they did it? They went out into the woods. They cut down a tree. They brought it in, and a workman fashioned it into the shape of the idol. Then they covered it, they gilded it, or they plated it. They would melt down many times even and cover it entirely with gold or with silver. And then they would take nails and they would fasten it in their place. And the mockery of this passage is that when it comes to idolatry is that people would worship these things that literally they made with their hands, that these things could not move of their own accord. They could not talk of their own accord. They could not even stand up without the support that mankind gave to them. And so the whole concept in this passage is entirely about idolatry of an actually fashioned idol that was made out of wood, covered in gold. Just because there are similar terms does not mean that that's what's being spoken of. So you got to be, people will go to that passage. And I've watched videos of it. People go straight to that passage and be like, what do you think that is? Just like I did to you a minute ago. And yeah, you could be like, well, it sounds like a Christmas tree, but it's not a Christmas tree. That's not what's being described there. And it would be historically, intellectually dishonest, I guess, would be to say that is what that is. And so my ultimate consensus is, why do we have a pagan shrine set up in our church lobby right now? If that person was talking about the Christmas tree that's set up in the lobby right now, they could have been talking about something else, I guess. I guess maybe one of the columns they think is really, I don't know. But I was assuming you were talking about the Christmas tree, whoever asked that question. And my conclusion would be, that's not what that is. And we have chosen to take that symbol or that object, because objects are neutral, and vest it with with symbolism, and that's really all that you can say to that. And so there's more things that we could say in regards to that, but we're out of time. So what I'm going to try to do next week is, if you've got more questions, you can throw them at me. I got through really half of the questions, including the one that came in, and so while we were talking tonight. And so if you've got more questions, then you can ask them. But next week, this will be, I'll give you a little, and these ones are shorter. I had a lot more information to cover on that one. But where did the idea that Jesus was born on or around December 25th come from? And you can research that yourself this week if you want. And do I believe it's a good idea to let your children believe in Santa? And so I can answer that one real quick. That yes, I think it's a great idea. And because, no, I think letting your children believe in Santa is not a great idea. But I'll tell you why next week. And so we'll cover those things and anything else that comes in. But thank you for being here. What? You don't believe in Katie? I don't believe in Katie. Nope, I don't believe in her. Really? Santa Claus over there. So. Santa Claus. All right, thanks for being here tonight. Appreciate you. You are dismissed. We will